Hello everyone, it's me, Henry Boxville. Welcome to my channel, Troubleshooting with Henry. I hope you flip out on this interview, but land safely. Today's guest is Dagan Shaw. Dagan is the owner and operator of Ottawa Parkour, Ottawa's only dedicated school for personalized training in freerunning and parkour, the martial art of the chase. Dagan successfully turned what was his passion into his career. Dagan is a trained teacher, an NCCP Level 2 gymnastics coach, a freerunner, and a parkour professional. He taught Taekwondo in Thailand, where he served as a stuntman in an Indian action movie. Dagan is a dynamic teacher and a practitioner of freerunning and parkour with mad skills, and is very excited about teaching his students the discipline, focus, and techniques necessary to practice this incredible sport with safety first in mind. Hi, Dagan, and welcome to Troubleshooting with Henry, the interviews. I've got 10 questions for you. Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready to rock. Thank you for that very generous introduction. That was very flattering.
Try not to flip out on this. Of course, I had to throw a parkour reference in there.
Of course.
All right, let's get this show on the road. When you were a kid, what did you want to do as a grown-up?
So when I was younger, I thought that I wanted to do something for the army. I really liked the idea of being sort of a real life good guy, going out and beating up bad guys and stuff like that. It's interesting how the distinction that you get to learn between what you're good at and what you want to do. Throughout school, I discovered that I was really good at math and science. And so that desire to do something for the military kind of fizzled away. And I figured, well, I must be sort of meant to be a scientist. So I started pursuing math and science, and I went in that direction. And it wasn't until I finished my physics degree only to discover that just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you actually enjoy doing it, and that there's a difference between sort of what you'll find really fulfilling and what you might do very well. So the short answer is first some kind of military, then I wanted to be a scientist, and then I thought maybe I could sort of split the difference and become a science teacher in high school. And it turns out that I also hated that. But I did love the teaching part. So now I get to teach parkour. So it's this really circuitous, winding path that ended up exactly where I want to be with my dream job. But almost at no point during it did I see that it was leading here.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
I am pretty crazy. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, that leap between science, military, and now parkour.
Exactly, yeah.
What is your career now?
So my career now is a parkour instructor for the most part. So slowly over the years, I've expanded my responsibilities into a realm that I'm really not well suited for and don't enjoy at all, which is all the businessman type stuff. I had to make a website, and I had to start advertising my program, and I had to find my own equipment and all of this businessman type stuff. My passion, the thing I like, is to get into a room with a bunch of kids that want to learn parkour and to teach them parkour until they're too exhausted to learn anymore, and then send them home. That's the part I love. I get to spend 75% of my time doing what I really, really love. And then the 25% is me doing all the stuff that makes me most of the money, it turns out.
What's the worst job you've ever had, and why was it so bad?
I worked in a restaurant for about 10 years, and it was no fun at all. It was a really miserable time. I really didn't enjoy it. So it was a pretty negative experience, but looking back on it, it gave me enough money that I could pay my way through school, which was very, very useful. And it taught me to keep my patience when other people were being rude or chaotic. And I really needed that skill set in order to be a coach. That was a weakness that I had. It was easy for me when I was a teenager to lose my temper if I felt that someone was being confrontational. And because I had to work at a restaurant for a decade and not lose my temper, no matter how rude or aggressive someone was being, that really let me expand my patience so that now when I'm coaching a class, if some kid is being, really unruly or even sometimes physically aggressive with me, he'll come over and, punch me in the tummy as 7-year-olds sometimes do. I have no problem with it. It's not difficult to keep my patience. It's not difficult to understand where they're coming from. And I can always just relax, disarm the situation. So and I wouldn't take that job away if they were like, oh, you want a time machine and go back and never work in the restaurant? I'd say no, I should have worked in the restaurant. It brought a lot of value to my life. But in terms of like, if I had to go in and do another shift at the restaurant, I would absolutely not want to do that. I'd look for any other thing to do.
I've got a question for you, Dagan.
Yeah, what is it?
Do you think your experience with Matt the Hammer give you any security in that sense? Because his philosophy was always respect, discipline, and following instructions from your teacher.
Absolutely. Almost all my martial arts instructors over the years have had sort of a similar foundation of principles, and they've had, I've learned it from the martial arts instructors I had before Hammer and the ones I've had since Hammer. The one thing I remember sticking out in particular about Hammer, who is, in case our audience doesn't know, is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor here in Ottawa. I think he works for the Ottawa Academy of Martial Arts, and he used to be my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. I remember one day a student was being really, really challenging about a technique. We were supposed to practice this technique, and the student was like, well, what if the other guy does this? And why? I don't think this would work because of that. And basically started a small physical altercation with Hammer in order to demonstrate that the move that Hammer was trying to teach us wouldn't work. And Hammer so patiently, so emotionlessly made the technique work on the guy and got him in the position that he wanted him in. And I can remember thinking to myself how inspirationally patient Hammer was with this guy. He didn't lose his temper. He was just calm, figured out the best and easiest way to solve the situation, did it, didn't hold a grudge against the guy, continued on the lesson. The class wasn't disrupted. Like, it could have gone so bad, and Hammer made it go so well. I was so impressed. And I always remembered, since then, I've always remembered the value of patience in a leadership position, not turning any of the people who are looking to you for leadership, not making any of them your adversary. You're all on the same team, even if they're getting a little hot-headed.
Did you go to college or university? And if so, what did you study there?
I went to university first for just straight up applied physics at Carleton. Did not enjoy it. After that, I took a 1-year break. I went to Thailand to see if I could be a stuntman. I was a little disillusioned by that trip. I came back. I found a bachelor degree of photonics technology that was offered as a joint program between Algonquin College and Carleton University. I took 4 years to do that. I really enjoyed it. It was a fantastic program. I learned a ton. And then I got a job in industry and discovered that I actually don't like being a research scientist or trying to develop new technology at all. So it was time to find another plan. I took a couple years of teachers college, or sorry, 1 year of teachers college. It was just a sorting mechanism for who was going to be a good teacher. So I really didn't enjoy that. And
Wow.
that's all the school I did.
Wow. That sounds like it was 100% sucky.
Yep, it really was. So I know it's not popular advice, but think twice before you decide to go to university because it's not for everyone. It is possible to waste a lot of time and money on something that's not going to be useful. I sure did.
What got you interested in the job that you have now?
I mentioned in my story about my education that I took a 1 year break between applied physics and photonics technology to go be a stuntman. Instead of getting very much exposure to work as a stuntman, I ended up being an assistant instructor for a Taekwondo school there. And I actually really, really loved that. That sort of planted the seed in my head that I would be a good teacher and enjoy teaching. I would get both of those things that I talked about earlier, being good at something and being fulfilled by it. I think it just kind of unfolded naturally, though. I did a bunch of parkour training at a gymnastics studio. And then one day they called me and offered me a job supervising the open training. So I agreed. And then from there, I gained enough experience sort of helping people with one or two things here and there and was able to gain the confidence to actually like start my own just normal gymnastics class. And then from there, I realized I could do a parkour class.
I can totally understand how you ended up where you did.
Thank you.
What do you find most challenging about your job?
There's two ways to think about that. There's the part that requires the most skill from me, and then there's the part that I still can't do very well. So the part that I still have trouble doing is what I was talking about before, all the businessman stuff. So that's definitely the part that I find most challenging. In terms of if you were to take a random human and plop them into my job, what they would have the most difficulty with, I think, is probably balancing progress in the sport with safety for their students and entertainment for their students. And there's these three things that need to be present in every class. It's got to be fun. It always has to make them better at the sport, but it's also got to be safe. And trying to figure out what drills, what moves, in what proportion, at what pace, with what instructions, it requires, in my opinion, requires a lot of understanding of the sport and honestly just a lot of trial and error.
I've seen accidents happen on YouTube, and sometimes they're fine and you scrape your shin. Other times, free running turns into free falling.
That's well said. There are some spectacular parkour fails on internet. I can't stand watching them. Sometimes people will send them to me and see some guy tumble off a building or smash his face on a railing. I don't have the stomach for it. All I can think of is all my students who I care so much about, how I don't want that to happen to them, how I don't want that to happen to me or my other training partners.
I find them strangely amusing and not for the reason that you described.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
So, can you give me an example of a time you had to troubleshoot an issue with your job or your personal life and the solution you came up with?
In my job, basically, one of the problems I was having was dealing with administration, trying to gain enough power over my program and the classes and my students' participation in those classes so that I could deliver a better product. And through diplomacy, we were able to make the program a lot better And they made more money. I made more money. I got more students into the program, and the students that I had in the program learned parkour more effectively because of the compromises we were able to make. So all that is to say, the most effective troubleshooting method seemed to be to approach it diplomatically, to try and work with other people to make it work instead of trying to one man power my way through the problem I was having, reach out to people and see what kind of options and try and cooperate and deal my way to a solution.
Yeah, that sounds way better than the one-man power approach.
That's true. It's unfortunate though, because the one man power approach is the one that occurs to me first all the time. Anytime there's a problem, I think to myself, maybe if I just kind of tuck my chin in and push hard, then this just stops being a problem. And
Yeah.
I have to remind myself there's more elegant solutions.
Oh yeah, that is very that's a very good way to put it. What do you find most rewarding about your career?
As a parkour coach, I'm totally convinced that everything I do for my work makes the world a better place. I take kids who've got lots of energy and oftentimes have difficulty focusing on a single task. I give them something that they love, something that they find engaging, something that's good for their physical health, something that requires their focus and calls upon them to rise to the challenge. And watching my students grow into those expectations, become the sort of person who can do parkour well, is so rewarding for me. It's more exciting for me to see one of my students get a new move or make some kind of like social breakthrough where they're no longer being mean to the people around them and they start to see the people around them as friends and training partners. Those sort of breakthroughs for my students are much more exciting and rewarding for me than anytime I learn a new move or something. And the fact that at the end of the day, I get paid to do that is just seems unfair. Seems like I've got something that everyone wants or doesn't even know is an option. It really feels like a dream come true.
Okay, what do you do for fun?
Parkour, honestly. I
Uh,
do a bunch of Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. I've been a martial artist for longer than I've been doing parkour. I draw portraits. All of these drawings behind me. I don't know if you can see these.
oh yeah, I can see them.
Yeah, so I drew all of these charcoal and graphite. There's a self-portrait. That's me. Not being patient. This one looks like it's me, but it's not. It's one of my buddies, Mustafa. He trains Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with me, and so I drew. I'll see if I can zoom in on this. It's nice to have a hobby that helps me take some time to focus on a puzzle that I like that doesn't hurt my body. Most of my hobbies, weightlifting, jiu-jitsu, parkour, all of these things, you can only do them for a couple hours and then your body starts to give out. I can sit and draw for 15 hours straight. And when I wake up the next day, I'm not like, oh, I drew too much, I can't turn my head now. Like, I can go right back to drawing. So it's nice to have at least one hobby that doesn't hurt. I used to do a lot of lock picking as well. I kind of got bored of that. There's some, you can make incredible progress at the beginning of the discipline. You'd be like, oh man, I could pick all these locks now. And then it really tapers out fast and you've got to spend a lot of time for just a little bit more progress in lock picking. So I kind of like got the low hanging fruit. I can get into my apartment if I forget my keys or something. Recently we went to a cottage and no one could find the keys for the cottage. They were supposed to be under the stairs, but they weren't. And so I just picked the lock and we got in and we weren't getting rained on. So, I recommend every athlete have one hobby that isn't physical, just so you don't go crazy.
All right, last question. If someone was visiting the city where you live What would you recommend they see?
If it was one of my parkour buddies, of course, coming in from another city, I'd take them to all the good parkour spots. If it was a jujitsu friend, I'd take them to my academy. I'd show them my jujitsu buddies. So it would really depend on what they like. I think in terms of what Ottawa has to offer that's maybe not unique, but stands out as compared to the cities around us, I'd say this is going to sound like such a lame answer. I really like our bike paths. We've got so many bike paths. I would honestly just take them on a really long bike ride. The fact that we've got the river and the canal, and you could just bike alongside it and have this beautiful landscape, especially when the sun is setting, because it sets, because of where we are, it sets kind of behind the water. So you get the sunset and then the reflection of the sunset off the water. And you can just bike down. You could bike for like an hour and a half and just watch the sunset over the water the whole time. It's like something out of a movie. It's incredibly beautiful.
Agreed. But thank you for being on my show.
Thank you so much. And it's great to see you again, Henry. I'm so glad you're taking this project on. This is really cool, man. This is very ambitious.
Thanks, Dagan. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, man. Fight the power.
I had no idea that Dagan was an artist. I think that's pretty amazing. Here's this guy who jumps off buildings for a living. I thought it was someone else who was doing the drawing, so I was completely taken by surprise, and they were super impressive. When Dagan said it was very important for every athlete to have at least one hobby that didn't hurt their body, I thought that was a very smart observation. Dagan talked about a time when he was quite stubborn. He lacked patience and would try to brute force his way through a problem. It made me think about how important it is for all of us to examine our own behavior, no matter our age. Even though Dagan is an adult, he was still able to learn some new strategies for life. In particular, he discovered the importance of diplomacy and compromise when working with other people. The one-arm push is not a useful strategy. It's not a good way forward. In fact, it can create roadblocks. So ask others for help if you need it. Listen to other people's points of view and be willing to compromise. It might just end up with a more successful outcome, as it did with Dagan. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe below. And as always, special thanks to Johnny Flynn for giving us permission to use his beautiful music. Happy travels!
Is waiting for